And then she pointed at me, like really serious, and she said, tell them they're not truly living unless they're living true.
Today on Supernormalized, we're welcoming Dr. Sharnael Wolverton-Sihon, a remarkable multidisciplinary expert who combines naturopathic medicine with quantum science and deep spiritual insight to help people reclaim their wholeness. From facing overwhelming health struggles herself to becoming a global teacher, reaching over 51 countries through her books and technology-driven biofeedback coaching, Dr. Sharnael's story is one of transformation powered by divine truth and conscious living. We'll dive deep into her unique language of miracles where science meets spirit, exploring how energy frequencies influence our well-being, and also she'll be offering practical tools like aromatherapy and biohacking to help balance modern stresses, plus revealing hidden layers of human potential through sacred knowledge. We also get into a bit of a discussion about how these pivotal moments with her contact with spirits actually assisted her in change in her life and her path to actually help others. Whether you're seeking breakthroughs in health or unlocking new levels of intuition and purpose, this conversation shines bright pathways forward. Get ready to rethink what's possible within yourself as we invite Dr. Sharnael to break down her empowering approach so you can start activating the abundant life hidden inside of your perfect DNA. Stay tuned for practical insights plus inspiring stories designed to help you remember you again. Let's get into it. Looking at the statistics that I have for YouTube and for my podcast apps, I have a lot of listeners and viewers that aren't yet liked and subscribed. So if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. It's free. And if you're on a podcast app, please give me 5 stars. That'd be really cool. It helps other people find these great conversations too. Thank you. You know, between you and me, I think we're right on the precipice of the big change that we've all felt in our bones forever, right? It's
Right.
now rolling out, and there is no way to stop it, and it's going to be quite interesting and weird where it goes. We all punched a ticket to come here to enjoy this, right? And as long as we can recognize that, I think that then we're in accord with the universe and our own universal path. As you say, it's remembering you. Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
think that's absolutely key. Yeah. Anyway,
Absolutely.
I'll
Yes,
stop
sir.
proselytizing and we'll get on with it. All right. So I'll welcome you to the show and we'll get into it.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay. Welcome to Supernormalized, Dr. Sharnael Wolverton-Sihon. Very good to meet you. And I've read your story and how all the things that you went through with health. That's such a common story. I've heard so many people say like they go to so many doctors and trying to figure out what's going on with them. The problem is though, it's not anything physical and it's not exactly spiritual. It's a mix of the two. And you discovered that for yourself. Can you tell us all about your story?
Yeah, I, like you said, went to multiple doctors. I was 7 years feeling terrible. A low-grade fever, achy, just hardly, I mean, just pain, physical inflammation and pain in my body. And, I had 3 small children and a job and, trying to maintain life whenever you don't feel good and you just could really just stay in bed all the time. That definitely takes a little bit out of your life force. And not to mention going from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor and, being hopeful every time and then they can't find anything and they send you somewhere else. And, I don't know where it is where you live, but in the States, there's not a lot of doctors that just do everything. They just swipe you out and send you to this specialist and that specialist. So if they don't find what's wrong in their kidney area, then they're going to send you to their, stomach area or their, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
so
And it's
yeah,
expensive as well, right? Because you've got to run
yeah,
around with,
yeah.
my God, yeah, I can imagine.
Expensive not only to pay each person, but the time off,
Time.
and then I would just be let down when we would wait and wait and wait for results and we get back and they're like, oh, we can't find anything, but try this person and try that person. And meanwhile, they're just collecting and I'm exhausted. And not to mention sitting in waiting rooms, where people actually are, different kind of sick,
Yeah.
sometimes going home with new things that weren't even wrong with you before you were there because your immunity is already, not your immunity, but a person's immunity is already down. So
Yeah.
all that to say, I was on, a lot of different meds that they just kept giving me medicine that have side effects, and then I would need more medicine with more side effects, and was kind of depressed. Definitely had given up hope. Just kind of thought, well, I guess this is how it's going to be, and it's just sad. And then I was teaching a course on dreams and visions in another state, and the lady that was hosting me saw my suitcase of all the medicine, and me constantly popping pills. And yeah, I think she was asking me questions about that. And I was like, oh yeah, this one has to go together and these can't go together. And this has to be at night and this is in the morning and this has to be with food. And this, all these mental gymnastics of even how to take all of this medicine. And she asked me, do you feel better? And I'm like, no. And so she told me about a guy who was there in her local area. And, it was a weekend, so I couldn't see him during the weekend, but she had really strongly suggested I stay an extra day to get in if she could get me in. I honestly didn't want to do it because I kind of fed up with it and just thought, well, they're not going to tell me anything anyway. But when I got in there, I was very surprised. He did some biofeedback on me, which I'd never been introduced to before. It did show up a lot of trauma in my body, which I had no idea about conversion disorders, or how things, 86% of all physical issues actually are emotional, like you were leading up to in the conversation. And yeah, he had all these weird contraptions that were weird to me at the time, a lot of biohacking things that are a lot more mainstream now, like red light therapy and hyperbaric chamber and ozone therapy and beamers and lasers. And, I was like, oh, this guy looks like some sort of mad scientist, and again, this is, 2008.
Wow,
So
that's very early with that stuff. So yeah.
so that stuff wasn't, now there's shops on every corner that have all these things, and gyms have them, and, wellness centers everywhere have them. And so it was very foreign to me. But he, talked a lot about frequency and trauma. And I had already been teaching a lot about neuroscience and physiology and, how that works with the physical body and how it works spiritually. So it was easy for me to just kind of like connect the dots
Yeah,
on all that.
right. Okay.
The more he would speak, I was just like, oh, that kind of makes sense. And
Yeah.
so he did what he did, and I actually used a lot of essential oils that, some companies are really good, some companies I can't speak to, and I've really had terrible results with. But there was a specific one I used, and that has frequency per which one you use. She explained to me how it'll go past your frontal lobe into your limbic system, and how the limbic system will start to dump these assignments that attach themselves to body parts through the trauma. And I was like, that was a little bit weird to me. Um, but I also would have done pretty much anything at that point. You could have said, put mayonnaise on your face and you'll feel better. And I would have probably tried it. You know?
So you were at the
So
end of your tether, really.
I was like, what do I got to lose? It was like,
Exactly.
uh, it was $165 investment. And I basically just went, tried it every day, did it for 16 weeks. And what's crazy is I dropped 80 pounds. I didn't change my diet. I went back to the guy and he found that I had lost 24 traumas out of my body. I went from 28 to 4 in
What was the
16 weeks.
device? What was the device?
I was using essential oils mostly.
What?
Yeah, because they'll go past your olfactory system, past the frontal lobe, and they'll basically tell the limbic system, which is the librarian of your body, you don't need these traumas anymore. It's time to defrag. It's time to let them go. And the frequency raises so high that you get to this kind of tipping point, and then even beyond the tipping point, where your body is like so high vibe that you're above the snake line. Nothing that even comes in your field can even affect you anymore.
God, I love the sound of that. Like, I've never heard of that. That's like
Yeah.
mind blowing me right now. So,
Yeah, I thought it was nuts too. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna put an oil on and my life's gonna feel so much better. Until it happened. And then because I had lost so much weight, I was still teaching conferences and, up to 40,000 people in one event. And, they're seeing the difference in me. I actually went to places where they didn't even recognize me. Like I went to
Wow.
Holland and I got out of my taxi with my suitcases. I was in Holland overseas and went to the registration table and I was like, "Hey, I'm here. Where can I put my stuff? Let's do this." And they were like, "Oh, you can register over there." And I was like, "It's me." I had been there multiple times over the years. Same thing happened in California. I was standing in the back watching the guy speaking, just walked in, and I was gonna go on later that night, but I was just there early watching, and the guy had a full-on conversation with me and didn't even know it was me anymore because I had just gotten so tiny, but also probably like my energy was different, and I felt good, and so all of these places I had been to over the years, over 17 years of teaching, now they were saying, "Can you teach this? Like, what did you do? Like, help us do frequency or whatever you're doing." Like,
Yeah, of
and so
course. I'm sitting here going, how do you figure it out? I want to
yeah,
know.
so it kind of morphed into me. Really, I went back to school and I got my
Mm.
doctorate thinking if I have more equipped knowledge than all these people who are coming to me, I can help them. And I never like was when I grow up, I want to be a doctor like that. I thought I would get my doctorate in like divinity or spirituality or theology. I've always been really interested in all of that avenue of spirit and God and source and energy but I didn't think I would, be a naturopath. And I didn't even know what a naturopath was, to be honest, until this whole thing happened or I created it to come to me and manifested, when the student is ready, the teacher comes, right? And
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
that was what my body was calling out to do. And now I've been doing that since 2014 and teaching all over the world and training and helping people get on their own path to thriving in abundance and using a lot of tools like he did and he does and use biofeedback. I could do it long distance and that's really cool. I have a lot of patients that are all over the world that I can just hop on a Zoom and we could do biofeedback and I could send results and we can work on them and scan them and see what's going on diagnostically and definitely still teach. I'm leaving actually Sunday for Bali and then I go to Sri Lanka and I'm looking at the farms and studying plants and plant medicine and seeing how it works with our body and frequency and what the best plants are in different countries that can be brought to the surface for us to distill and work with our physical bodies to help, bring us to a better, higher vibe. And, every country seems to have something very specific that is unique to the environment and the vibration and the climate and the culture that we can use, just like we all as people are very diverse. Plants are very diverse and have their own energy and their own medicine. So I'm looking forward to that. And I've never been to Bali or Sri Lanka. I've been to Oman and Turkey and Croatia and Singapore and Australia many times and New Zealand and France and 50 something countries now to do research and to teach and study. And so these are kind of new things, but yeah.
Cool. That sounds great. That sounds great. I've just got to actually roll back to before you started to discover all these new paths for yourself. Would you say way back then were you more of a material sort of scientist sort of edge when your own understanding and this opened you up to a new way?
I wasn't a scientist at all, not
Okay.
by trade. I was a
Hmm.
spiritual teacher and an itinerant minister at the time. But I will say quantum physics was one of my favorite subjects in school, and I always kind of geeked out on like data and research. And, I grew up military. So in the US military, they're very like, you do what doctors say, you do everything robotically, like, your yearly checkup and your yearly, everything. And, it's you get all the stuff and you do everything, so the natural thing, my grandmother, actually my dad's mom, was more like, oh, you need magnesium and you need this, but we all just kind of thought that was funny and we just or some of the older things that she did, like put onions in your socks, and it makes the cough go away, and some of those things that she would try to tell us, like, we just thought, wow, she's a little bit, whatever. But now I'm looking back at those things and she's passed and I'm like, oh, wow, she had so much knowledge. And I just like let that go over my head through my programming. And so I've had to unlearn, a lot and remember. And I like the word remember better than learn. It sounds a lot easier to me because it's all here, right? Like everything is here. Just when we're ready and open up to it, we have all the answers if we really choose to find them and to remember them.
That's right. Yeah. If we get out of our own way and work with our intuition, we can tune into being in accord with the universe and then everything comes. Yeah. Yeah. How did your background in ministry influence your approach as you transitioned into naturopathy, quantum science, and spirituality?
Yeah, well, I've always had different kind of strange encounters and really been drawn to spirituality and just love and authenticity and truth. And
What do you mean by strange encounters, though? That's got me curious.
my first encounter, I was like 5 years old on Easter Sunday, actually, and I was at my grandmother's house, a different grandmother on my mom's side, and I had this like apparition or I just didn't, I mean, it looked like a hologram or something that came in my room that looked like Jesus or I didn't even know who it was at the time. I just remember the feeling that I felt was very like just this immense love, this immense like, man, I could feel it right now. I always get teary-eyed whenever I think about, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I
Yeah,
understand.
it literally like I feel it through my whole body,
Mm.
the way that I felt. And I just thought, this guy, wow, this guy, and I went down, I remember telling my mom at the time and everybody like what something just came in my room and, trying to explain just the love that I felt and I was crying and just this all I knew is at that minute I, I just my whole life changed really. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that and him and it and just the availability of love and self-love and just had this overwhelming feeling. Sorry.
It's okay.
But and I just felt like I'm gonna have this job or some mission really to just make sure everyone feels love.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think the world is needing that message right now. And I understand you've been through a really powerful experience with that. It's amazing what depth of unconditional love is actually available to us when we open ourselves to it.
Yeah, and I didn't find out till like second grade. I went to school one day and there was like this statue of like a bust, I think they call it, when it's just like from here up of a person that looked similar. And it was a bronze statue, so there was no color or anything. Now there's all these pictures of what Jesus looks like, and it's like, that doesn't look like him. It's like, that's not him. But I remember going, who's that guy? And, the hair is similar. And then she's like, "Oh, that's Jesus." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Now I know a name, But in 2008, I had another thing where I had, really after this health, I was dealing with this health thing, and I had was going through a terrible separation with my partner at the time, and so I was sick. I had a separation because of the divorce. I lost my job, uh, pretty much because I was in ministry, and that's a bad thing, in ministry in the States. If you're in a religious type setting, they're like, oh, divorced, single, lady, so we were on television. I was on television at the time, and everything got canceled. And so I was in this like real space of just like, what now? What do I do? How do I take care of my kids? How do I get as well? So I came out into my living room one morning and there were these two ginormous, like 14-foot beings of light there that had, they were different in some ways because one was female and one was male. It wasn't Jesus. I was terrified as well as felt that same love because I just wasn't expecting it, and it was just like, oh my gosh, walk in and my whole living room looked different. Like there was an overlay almost of like them, and then there was like books all over, and there was like this desk, and everything looked really antique-y, and I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I just thought to myself like, what is this a dream? Am I making this up? I thought like I was crazy. I was scared, and I remember hearing, it's okay. And I kind of felt that same love feeling, but also just like totally freaked out. And I came around because the lady version, I say lady, the female looking one came around and like sat at this desk, and the desk was super tall because she's way tall. And I came around and was looking because she had this book, and I went to look to see like what's in this book. And it was like all of these records of people who were healed of different things in different ways, a lot through essential oils and the date of when they were healed and how, what they had before, what they had after. It was just line after line. And I was just enamored. And I remember she looked at me and she said, "What do you want?" And she didn't say it with her words. It was like all like with
Understanding.
nonverbal.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to be a part of that. And she looked at the other guy, and the guy was like, that. And then he looked at her, and then she pointed at me, like really serious. And she said, "Tell them they're not truly living unless they're living true." And then she slammed the books. Everything was gone. The desk was gone. The books were gone. They were gone. I'm sitting there just like shaking. Like I literally felt it from my inside out. And I'm just like, wow, like, am I crazy? Is this a dream? Did I make this up? Like, am I going to wake up any minute? I started having like all of this flood of like information come through me, colors and formulas and words that I didn't know. And I just instinctively like grab a paper and just start writing everything I can possibly draw out these graphs and formulas and pictures and words. And I'm really thinking like I'm going to wake up in a minute. And, I had taught on dreams and visions. And one of the things is like write it down as soon as you wake up. And so I'm thinking if I'm in the dream writing it and this is a dream, and when I wake up, I'm going to write it. And then kinetically, maybe I'll just keep some of it and it won't just go away. And then, like, I never woke up. Like, I kept waiting and waiting, going, I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna wake up. And then I just never woke up. And so I called some people and I'm just telling them, like, oh my God, I don't know what just happened. I feel crazy. I was bawling. I felt like something cleared.
Powerful.
And yeah, I was just like, I don't know what just happened, but I feel like everything else is about to be different. I just felt something's gonna change here. And then I just kept having all these dreams about going back to school. And I was on a plane actually going somewhere, and I thought to myself, just in my mind, God, do you really want me to be an ND? And I look out, I'm on the tarmac. I look out the window, and there's this like cone thing, and you know how they have like letters with arrows, and they're like this way, that way, to direct everything, and it said ND that way. And it was like, my God. So yeah, Monday I called and signed myself up to go back to school, and
Awesome.
yeah, I've just kind of just been doing that ever since.
Wow. Now, if you know anything about shamanism, you know that what happens is when some of the paths that shamans take is that spirits come along and elect them. And what we mean by elect them is they pick them on the shoulder, tap on the shoulder, and say, "You're working with me, and this is what's happening."
Wow.
Now, your story sounds like that, but in a different sort of way. And that moment where you're in your room and it shifted into another reality was a real experience. And you've just opened yourself up intuitively to that space. And when you're in that space, you're talking to the spirits, and they're the spirits that are guiding you. And they said, "Yeah, well, that's it. You're it." And you've chosen to follow it. And all power to you. That's fantastic, And to recognize that it is a important life change event, and then have that appear as qualia in your life by seeing that on the tarmac as an extra message. It's like, well, can you deny it?
Uh,
No, these things come through like that. That's what happens.
yeah. I love synchronicities. I love signs. Everybody who ever hangs out with me, they're like, how does it, you get signs all the time. They're like, I'll say, well, I'm thinking about blah, 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 we'll be together. And then something will like show itself because we create it,
That's
it's
it.
already there, but we're just pushing out information, and then it shows up in the physical to kind of guide us and say, yeah, this is the right path. This is the right path. And all
Yeah,
these little, it says that signs follow those who believe. And the word believe is interesting because it's to be alive in something. And I am alive. We are alive in signs when we are. And when we are, we get them.
that's right. So when you're in accord with the universe, you can actually hear everything that spirit is saying. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So many people are unfamiliar with long distance biofeedback technology that you use with your clients worldwide. Can you explain what that is and how it helps facilitate healing from a distance?
Absolutely. And before we even go there, I forgot.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I put everything in a book, all that
Okay.
stuff that happened, and that was the book, The Science of Miracles, Remembering the Frequency of Love. And biofeedback is probably one of my most favorite modalities because, especially us doing this long distance, it really helps because I do travel so much and I have been to so many countries. I meet so many people who are in crisis or, take my information and then maybe they don't need it then, but later on they're like, oh, I remember she was talking about this, and they find me again and they're like, hey, I need help, and I'm able to work with them. But basically, we use a lot of different modalities that are all combined into one thing. We use Evox, which we get a signature voice that gives us a kind of a blueprint of what's going on physically within the body just by having a recording and listening. And then we also take a picture of your actual biofield, which now we have the technology that can see, what is it that we're radiating out? What is it that's within that's sending that vibration out, and what's maybe out of balance or under balance or causing dissonance within the field. Once we get, just a few things to plug into the software, then it'll give us 25 to 30 reports on different things. We look at psychic attack and attachments and entities on the spiritual side. We also look at like 5G. We look at vitamin deficiencies, sleep patterns. Maybe you need to be grounded. Maybe you need to sleep more. We do look at major organs, today's stress. We do have an emotional report as well. Oh my gosh, there's so many. We look at sensitivities with food, with environment, and it's very, very accurate. It'll show if there's hormone issues or inflammation or whatever. And once we get those diagnostics, the software will actually create frequencies to find that alchemy for the person, and then we actually send them back through the quantum realm
Mm.
to the person. And the first time that I was introduced to this, I was like, this can't happen long distance. Like my left brain was like, no. But the doctor who worked with me was from another state, far away, and he worked on me long distance, and I was seeing results like instantly. I felt it from long distance. Not everybody does feel it long distance, but I did. For me, in my case, it actually slowed things down so much that I got really sleepy and tired, and it knocked me out right in the middle of the day, which I never take now. I never sleep during the day. There's something about FOMO that I just think I'm going to miss out, and I can't sleep if lights are on, but I did that day. And then the second time he did it, the same thing happened. The third time, it actually integrated so much out of my field that needed to move that I had this opposite effect. I was just full of energy and running around cleaning everything and getting rid of everything and just marking all these things off my list that had been on for so long. And but yeah, I I bought the software pretty quickly after because I was like, I need this for myself. There are programs for me, there's programs for animals, there's programs for my home. You could scan your whole house and see what's going on. But what I didn't realize is when we actually clear the field, not only does it change things up physically and emotionally, but abundance started coming in, like financially.
Nice.
Partnerships were coming in out of nowhere that I was like, how in the world would I have just happened to be with this person? And they just came in my realm. Almost everywhere I go, I seem to attract celebrities and like authors and, big influencer. I mean, it's a joke at this point because since I started doing this, like I'll literally be on the plane that's next to Hulk Hogan or some famous boxer or singer or actress, or, it's like that's shifted things up. Finances have changed. And I've worked with people who, once they get rid of parasites physically in their body, they have similar experiences where like the narcissistic boyfriend stops calling, or maybe someone had owed them money for a decade and all of a sudden they just pay without even asking, or, just kind of strange thing, job opportunities come or checks come in the mail or random money is in the bank and they're like, I don't even know how this got here. Because when you clear the field, it doesn't just affect health, it affects everything. And our Western mind thinks, thyroid, health, abundance, partnership, where really you can't pee in a swimming pool and hope it doesn't get everywhere. Like if you
What a
have a
great
bad partner,
analogy.
yeah, yeah, or there's no smoking section, right? It's like everything that eases out, everything seeps out and leaks,
Mm,
so it's going to leak into every area. If you have bad partnership with your spouse or your partner, that affects business, that affects children, that affects health, that, everything is connected.
yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah, I love biofeedback.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. I like the way you described that then. That's really clear. Now, you also use aromatherapy, crystal healing, and you recommend EMF protection devices for people. Essentially, biohacking is a set of core tools for you. And I even see that you're actually wearing blue light blockers right now.
I
So am
am.
I. Mine are clearer ones. But yeah, so you're aware of all of that, which is really, really good. And what advice would you give to someone interested in starting their own holistic wellness journey using these tools and methods?
Yeah, actually, I just did a video with one of the creators of the biofeedback software, and we're always looking for new holistic practitioners in this arena. I think that's a big win for anyone who's interested in a path or a career in that. There are so many people, really, really, not just the physical, but the emotional, that just one scan can really shift things for people where they can get clarity and ease and moving grief out. There's so many people with division. Estrangement is at the highest level I've ever seen. I mean, it used to be 1 out of 500 people might be estranged from a family member, and now it's 1 out of 5. And that causes, people to have so much pain that they don't know what to do with this pain, and it sometimes can cause people to do risky things or to, get out of character with some of their practices or behaviors and choices, and alcohol and drugs, and suicide is way, way up, unfortunately. So yeah, not only the conversion disorders where people take on physical pain, but the emotional part. I think a lot of people are, I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but in my practice, so many people are just really fighting like depression and just grief and, feeling helpless or just feeling like the world is a scary place, and we can help with that. We can help clear some of that and maybe bring some clarity to where we're supposed to be in this time and space and why we're here, and equip them with, some courage and some strength to keep going and to remember, who they are. And
Mm,
so I love that. And it crosses over in the spirituality again of like, I feel like my place is to kind of help you find your dreams and for people to find their destiny. My destiny is to help you find your destiny and to live in a thriving way. And so that's one way. I mean, I also offer ozone therapy, and if you're interested in, using ozone at home, I have this whole teaching and how people can get involved in that. I train a lot of people in aromatherapy. I have ways that we can work with you. So you could do that wherever you are as well. So there's a lot of ways. I don't want to just help the patient. I want to equip the patient to be their own doctor, because that word doctor actually just means teacher.
yes.
And I think most doctors are not teachers. I think they're just like drug dealers. God bless them. And yeah, I think I just I think we should all be like my great grandma or my grandma, and we should have certain things in the home to just have on standby and to have the education and the training, to know how to take care of ourselves and our family. And anybody that works with me with aromatherapy, I have like a private Facebook group. There's like 140 training videos in there. And whether you're a mom or a dad or or you have some CEO job, I think everyone should have some education and some basic things where they can just help themselves, because who knows if we won't have pharmaceuticals or we won't have surgeons or we won't have whatever, if things can change pretty quickly. And these are things that we should all have, like not just the knowledge in our head and in our hearts, but some of the things just for emergency cases to have, home.
Yeah, no, it's good to be skilled and to have a greater understanding of your body and how things work. I've been using ozone therapy myself for quite a while now, and I use it with a generator, usually just for healing things, because it's amazing how fast things heal. As once it's exposed to pure ozone, it's like crazy. I've seen open wounds just close up and disappear in 2 days, which people have had trouble with, and they're like, "Well, this is not healing, whatever." Whatever we do, nothing heals it. And doctors don't know what to do. And then they drop over and they put it on for what, 2 minutes and it's gone. It doesn't make sense, does it, really? But there's a lot of amazing tools out there that do help people. So you've also authored your 5 books. You showed us one there before. And what message or insight do you want readers to take away from of your written work?
Yeah, mainly living true.
Living
Like,
true. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, my practice is actually called Living True Wellness.
Okay.
And the lady or whoever this being was, I mean, I asked, what is your name? And she said true. The other guy said living. And then she actually said, they're not truly living unless you're living true. And she's actually come to me several times about other things. And sometimes I just hear her voice, like even if I get quiet enough, I hear that voice. And then there's also just like our own higher self voice. And so I would say for anyone who's out there, the best way to live, in what I saw out of that experience is there's chemicals that release in our body when we do embody truth and live truth, like moment to moment to moment to moment, not just like, should I take this job or, someone saying, hey, do I look good in this outfit? And you're like, yeah, it looks good. And you're really lying. I don't mean that kind of lying versus telling the truth. I mean, like, where do you live? Who are you doing life with? Are you going to have more kids? Are you not going to have kids? Are you going to live in this country or this city? What are you going to do as your mission? What do you eat every day? What do you drink every day? The ancient scriptures actually say whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all for the glory of God. That word God actually means manifestation. And so every single thing we do creates a timeline one way or another. And then we have the collective timeline. And so, all of this is a radiation in the field, everything we're thinking about, everything we're talking about, everything we're feeling, all the radiations of every organ and every cell that goes out. And it not only radiates, but it magnetizes. So we're constantly having this torrid, just like this, of, radiation, but also this magnet that comes to us. Um, we can create something really beautiful and powerful, or we can default think that all this stuff is just happening to us and not really take ownership or responsibility. We are responsible and we can change things and we are changing things one way or another. So why not just make it good, like happy and thriving? And I
Mm.
always say, some people say go big or go home. And I say stay home and go big. Like just staying in that
I
truth,
love that.
staying in your actual signature.
Yeah. So it's all about being true to yourself, essentially. And a lot of that you were describing then sounded a lot to me like also being able to listen clearly to your, like, even spiritual intuition
You're
as a part
right.
of your life choices. How do you recommend people do that?
Moment to moment, because when we listen and we follow those voices or that voice, depending on, whatever, when we live true and embody truth, there is a whole chemistry that comes down that helps our immunity, that gives us hydration, that gives us immunity, that gives us clarity, strength. You hear about these women who maybe a car fell down on a kid or something. They go over and they could just like superhero it, like pick up 1,500-pound car or something. And, that's them. We are so powerful. And then the same sense, we can actually lie or take a wrong turn, not technically in your car, but I mean, make a wrong choice, wrong to you choice. And there is a whole orchestra of chemistry that comes down and saturates all your cells that actually does the opposite. It makes you suppress your immunity, suppresses your digestion system. So you're not properly digesting and people get overweight and they get sluggish and tired and don't have the energy and they don't have the clarity and entities can come and lowering the frequency by living a lie can put that in the radiation and then you start attracting all these like negative things that empower it even more and amplify it even more and then they're like, oh, why does this keep happening to me? It's like, oh, you're creating it. And it's just this ripple effect that happens. And so, yeah, being quiet is a good tip, getting quiet and making time to have that quiet space, getting in nature, making sure you're eating well. Another thing I suggest is maybe getting a biofeedback scan because a lot of times people can't really get those answers because there's so much going on that it's so chaotic that they really don't know what their voice is anymore, and they're just like lost and kind of confused. And parasites can physically cause those problems, as well as like mold and fungus and 5G. And there's a lot of things that can kind of bring dissonance to the mind, and then we're like confused and not know what our actual truth is. Where is north? So those are some things, because I really feel like anything that's measured can be managed. And if we don't even know where our starting point is, like, how do we get to the goal? If you have a GPS, you got to have a starting point to know where you're going. And once you have that starting point, we can look at these reports and we can say, let's kill these parasites so the equation is removed from the field, and we can have a more positive projection, which brings a new magnet to you. And you're going to feel better, because parasites won't take your life force anymore. Or maybe you need to sleep more. Maybe you're deficient in vitamin D or C. And that can just change things too, big time, like just something really simple like that. And so the reports are just so accurate and so powerful to help people. I did 11 people on Saturday at this workshop. And it was so funny because there were people waiting patiently, and one of the reports is emotions. And when I was getting some of the people who were waiting like extra long, the emotions were like bored, jealous, like anxious, because they've been waiting. I was like, oh, you were jealous of the people who went before you, and you're bored, and you're just waiting, and you're, impatient, anxiety, those kind of things. And one lady had painted her bathroom that morning, and it showed up environmental issues, paint fumes. And she was like, what?
Wow.
And another person pumped gas that morning, and her highest dissonance in her field was gasoline. And so I was like, did you pump gas on your way over here? And she's like, yeah. And so it's very accurate. I mean, people were like, what? How did you know that? And I usually tell people, don't tell me anything. I don't want to know what's wrong with you. Let this show you, so you have the faith and you believe that this is working. And every time people are like, I don't know, like, this is crazy. How did you know that? I'm like, I didn't do it. Like, this is the machine. So
Wow. What machine do you use?
I use Genius Feedback, Biofeedback.
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah, if you go to my website too, there should be something on there, or I'll send you a link. You can even try it for
Yeah.
like a trial if you want to try it yourself.
Yeah, I want to try it. It sounds very cool.
Yeah, you can play around with it and see what you think.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'd love to. That'd be great. So, for moments when people feel stuck in negative patterns around health, business, or relationships, what are first steps they can take to begin to remember their true self?
Yeah, again, nature.
Nature. So, resetting in some way.
Yeah, there's so much code in nature. There's so much integration, grounding, or just being outside, breathing fresh air, getting your feet literally in the dirt, grounded, or being by the water or ocean. It's science too. It's not just like you feel good because it's pretty. There's so much about the ions and the smells and the aromatherapy and the
Yeah.
sounds. Even hearing birds sing and things like that have been known to physically help us. But also, like, flowers will open up, and there's life to all of this, of what we've been given here on the planet, as far as plants and animals and, those kind of things. So nature's really, really big, paying attention to diet, getting something like a diagnostics to know, like, maybe there's some things going on under the hood that are keeping you from being able to really have that clarity. I've had a lot of people who come and they either have fungus or mold or parasites, and that will really not only make you feel achy, but it will really scramble your brain, because the consciousness of these entities within our own body, they have their own voices and their own sound. And we may not technically hear that, but it's still there, and
Yeah.
it causes a dissonance, and us being able to really like figure out what we're supposed to be doing, or where we're supposed to go, or who we're supposed to be with, or make bad choices because we're so numb to the actual truth that we just kind of go along and do whatever we think we're supposed to, and it may not be the right thing.
You emphasize activating perfect DNA, and that will actually help for miracles within us all. Is this something anyone can learn? And what does it actually look like for people?
The activation for
Sorry, what does activation look like practically for your clients, for example?
Yeah, I mean, there's the physical activation, like you said, ozone brings a literal charge to your cells. But hyperbaric chamber or red light therapy, light therapy in general can literally bring a physiological exchange and set us in a different direction just by getting up in the morning and seeing the sun or watching the sunset or, grounding, just grounding for 10 minutes. It's something like 200 microbials activate within the body to really help like shift things out and move things out. Directly seeing, sunlight and having the sunlight hit our skin does amazing things, especially like you said, if we're seeing screens all day, and that it's not just our eyes, but this is the window to all the things. And so this affects like everything within us internally. So activations, I guess that could be a lot of things. And again, I don't separate spirituality from science. I kind of see them together. So when we have those spiritual awakenings, it's going to affect the biology and the physiological areas and vice versa. Like, seems like the more physically we feel better, the more open we are to spirituality. And I think more and more people are kind of seeing that bridge. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I'm seeing that bridge for sure. And in fact, when I think back to when I was a child, we're born like that. We're connected to spirit, we're connected to nature, and it's natural to live in that space where you are in accord with the universe as a child. And we seem to get separated by society, societal conditioning, media, social media, and all that sort of thing. And I'm seeing that rift in our society now because of all that. One of the major things that I recommend to people is just stop watching all of the garbage on streaming
Oh,
media. I mean,
gosh,
seriously,
yeah.
look at it. I mean, how many times do you have to watch somebody murder somebody? It's not entertainment. You know what I mean? It's just awful. So,
I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for, because you know what? Our limbic system, like this is the frontal lobe I was saying before, the limbic system cannot tell the difference between me and you, can't tell
exactly.
the difference between fake and real.
That's right.
The more what we put our eyes on and our ears to, those gates, basically it registers in your body as if it's actually happening.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, mirror neurons.
yeah, even talk therapy, if we're still talking about not making cheerleader in second grade, like and or whatever traumas. I'm not saying never talk about it, but if you're not talking about it with solutions and with replacements, then you're really just making it bigger and
Yeah.
making it prolong instead of clearing it and having new opportunities and new choices. But the same thing with the limbic system is on a good side when we see kindness, we have all these chemistry things that affect us that we feel happy. And when we see someone else win, we feel that. And when we give physically, money or help someone, your limbic system registers that as we're receiving. And that's why we feel good when we do things for other people and or give money or help charities because our limbic system can't tell. And the same thing with judgment. Like we can judge someone, and the ancient scriptures would say, judge and you will be judged. The limbic system perceives that as us judging ourselves and does all the chemicals again of the lying chemicals of, suppressing the immune system and making us look old and graying our hair and wrinkling our skin. And so judgment is really tricky. And, watching TV, listening to the news, which, most of it is just propaganda, bad music, scary movies, murder movies, video games.
Mm.
A lot of people are really just fascinated with video games or even social media can be a place that isn't serving us as you can use it as a tool, but if it's become a place where you're like jealous of everybody or you're using it to just troll people and argue and fight, I'm sure you've seen that too. That does not serve anybody.
Yeah, there's no benefit whatsoever. So, yeah, I think a lot of social media is the wrong name for it. It should be anti-social media, if anything.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. It's sad. It's not funny. But yes, you're
Yeah,
right.
it's where we're at in history. But you are speaking to good changes for people and good change overall, I think, for consciousness with the recognition of how we can become in accord with ourselves and the universe. And in doing so, good things come to us and the people around us. So, yeah, all power to you with that. So, Dr. Sharnael, we've come to the end of the episode. So, how can people find you and find your book?
Yes. Go to drsharnel.com. It's DR, like the short doctor, Dr. Sharnael, Sharnael, like Israel.com. I have workshops there if you're interested in learning any of this. I have all my books there. My podcast is there. I do soul audits, biofeedback. I could do coaching if you're looking into like just divinity or divine partnership or trying to get some direction. One thing that came out of these, I guess, encounters is I'm able to see patterns and hear patterns that may be off within the voice. And so sometimes 30 minutes with me, or less than 30 minutes, 15 minutes, I can usually find the pattern that isn't serving them, and we can replace it with something that will change the timeline for them. But yeah, go to drsharnael.com and I'd be excited to work with you guys no matter where you are, and we can have you be thriving and living a better life.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and coming on and sharing all that you shared. It's so appreciated.
Yes, sir. Thank you for
All
having me.
right.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'll just say goodbye to listeners. That was another awesome episode with Dr. Sharnael today. Thank you so much for coming on the show and being so vulnerable and sharing of your powerful, transformative, changing experiences that pivoted you in the right direction to be able to help so many others in the world. So much power to you. Thank you so much for coming on. If you've enjoyed today's show and you need to express that in some way, one way you could do it is to visit Dr. Sharnael's website and say thank you for coming on the show. And the other way to do it is also to like and subscribe so other people get to hear these and see these great episodes and the work that people that are amazing like Dr. Sharnael across the world are doing. So thank you so much for listening. If you've been a listener today, also give me 5 stars. That'd be really nice. And say something nice. That'd be really cool. And if you could share this with a friend that you think would appreciate it, that'd be really appreciated as well. And so until next episode, it's bye for now.